what you want to do is you want to click on the search results over here. There's lots of other things that you can do down through here, but to be honest with you, what I spend most of my time doing in Search Console is on that search results page. Now, when you first come into this, these two boxes up here, I forget I have this little pointer over here. You'll see that you got two colored boxes at the top and two boxes that are not colored. The first thing I always do is I click those two boxes, because what you got right now is the graph here, as well as your chart down here, your keyword list down here, only has these two measurements, just clicks and total impressions. You want to make sure that you can see your average click-through rate and your average position. So that's the very first thing that I do. And then you can see they now have a colored background, you have 4 graphs, and then you have 4 columns down here. Now, I do want to mention, Sam talked about keywords everywhere, which I do love that plugin, but I'm going to recommend that when you are when you're working in Google Search Console, turn off that extension, because if you don't, you're going to see like 2 columns of numbers down here that are coming right next to this that are coming from keywords everywhere, and to me it's very confusing because I have to stop and think, okay, is that keywords everywhere information or is that Google information? So just it's a great tool. Just turn it off when you're working on this in your Search Console. Now I'm going to show you some different things here. This first button up here is going to show you, or the first, where I have the number 1, I guess I should say, is your date range. When you click on that, you can filter by last 7 days all the way up to the last 16 months. Search Console has 16 months of data for you. That's awesome because there used to be only 90 days worth of data, so I love having 16 months. You can also set a custom date. So if you make some changes in one of your blog posts and you want to see what it's done since X time, all you have to do is just click on the custom date, and you can set it from the day that you made the corrections or updates until now. One thing to note too is this does say last 7 days, but it's really not the last 7 days. It's technically the first 7 of the last 9 days. There's a 2-day lag time in Google Search Console. You can also compare date ranges, and I'm going to give you like a little warning about that. Make sure that when you're doing that you're comparing similar time ranges. And let me give you an example. I blog about Cub Scouts. Nobody's thinking about Cub Scouts in July. Nobody. Everybody's coming to my blog in September. So I would never want to have a situation where I'm comparing September to July, or because it just is crazy, or compare July to another month. Like I might compare July to June and think my blog is exploding and dying and it's awful. But that's not what's happening. It's just a time thing. So make sure that you're comparing similar time periods when you are doing some comparisons. Okay, so that was the first thing up here. The second thing here is a little thing that has a plus sign and it says new. And when you click on that, here's what you get: query, page, country, device, search appearance. These are things that you can actually search by or filter by. The query is basically keywords. Page is really, it's page or post. I know sometimes people get get those mixed up a little bit, but it's basically any URL. Your country is going to be obviously the country that you're from. Device is whether what you're looking like on mobile versus desktop. Search appearance includes things like the rich snippets that Sam was talking about. I only ever look at query and page. Again, that's my my demographics, or I have primarily a U.S. audience, so I don't really need to. Depending on what your blog is about, you may want to switch up and do something different there. Okay, when you click on, after I selected query, and there's 2 things I can do here. First thing I can do is I can filter my query, and what that is going to do is that's going to just help me narrow it down to one specific page, or maybe I want to see all my pages that have cake recipes on them. You could do queries containing the word cake. There's a comparison here too. Let me go back. So you can do some comparisons as well. And this is, and I misspoke, this is not pages, this is queries, but you can do kind of the same thing with pages or queries depending on what you select. Okay. The third thing here that I want to talk to you about is this little part right here where you have the little inverted triangle that's made up of 3 lines. And when you click on that inverted triangle, you get query, clicks, impressions, CTR, or position. This is just really going to help you be able to filter your information even more. Let's say I want to look at queries that have over 10 clicks. Then I can, what I would do is I would click on that, and then this fourth part comes here. Like when you've selected this, and you'll be able to tell that you have something selected because you'll have a little gray circle with a number in it. And then this pops up, and let's say I wanted to do, anything that had more than 10 clicks, so greater than 10 clicks. Or if I wanted to do by impressions or queries, I could also do that as well. Now, the fifth thing here is, let me show you that is actually enables you to send your data to CSV, which you can open up in Excel or into a Google Sheets. And most of the time, I export my information to Excel just because it's easier to manipulate it. So there's not really an easy way within Google Search Console to say, only show me things where my position is greater than 4, but less than 10. So that having that kind of in between thing, it makes it a little bit harder to do that on here. So that's why I send it to Excel. Okay, before I go on, yes, ma'am.
Why would I want to put those 2 numbers in? Why would I want to choose those?
Very good question. The reason you might want to do that is that we know that the top ranked result gets most of the clicks, second the second most, third the third most. Once you get down to 4 and greater, it drops off, like the click-through rate drops off dramatically. So if in that situation, I would want to find the results where my page showed up on the first page of Google results, but I'm down toward the bottom, because those are some that I might want to try to get up to that 3rd or 4th position, maybe even that 2nd or 3rd position. So that's why you would want to kind of look at that. Yes?
What position now would be considered like page 2 on Google?
11. Yeah. Okay, any other questions before we go on? Okay. Here are some of the ways that you can use the Search Console to grow your blog. You can improve your click-through rate. So, for example, if you've shown up 100 times and your click-through rate is 10%, that means you're getting 10 clicks. If you can increase that click-through rate to 15%, that gives you 5 more clicks. So, so that's what we mean by that, improve your click-through rate. You might want to improve your position. Just like I mentioned, the higher up you are in the search results, the more likely you are to be clicked. And let me get caught up over here on my notes. You may wind up ranking for more keywords. So that's always a good thing. It's almost like I don't know really what to call it, but like your roots growing out of a tree or something, where, if you could you're not ranking for these 6 keywords over here, but now you are, that opens up your blog to a position where there's an opportunity to get clicked over from those keywords as well. And then it may give you some ideas for writing new posts. Now, in my opinion, this part that we're getting ready to do is one of the most important parts, is making sure that you're picking the right post to work on. We're going to start by looking at kind of click-through rate. So when you first start out, you're going to start with that search results report. I'm going to click through some of these kind of quickly, but then I'll stop and talk to you a little bit about it. You're going to start with that search results report that I showed you earlier. You can change your time frame if you want. It does default to 3 months. You may decide to change it to 12 months. Given that my Cub Scout blog is very seasonal, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to just look at a 3-month time frame, because if I looked at the prior 3 months to right now, because this is my busy time, I'm going to get the months that were not so busy, and I'm not going to get really good, information. So I always like to go back and look at what's happened over the last 12 months. When you're doing this, you're going to make sure you click those 2 boxes like I showed you earlier to make sure that you're showing your average click-through rate and your average position. And you want to take note of what your average CTR is. Then you're going to click on pages. You're going to sort by page impressions. I should have another page up here, right? Pretty soon. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So, again, we've clicked these 2 boxes. You want to remember this percentage right here. The second step you're going to do is you're going to click on pages so that it's showing you your posts. And then you're going to click on impressions, because this sorts them by the highest impressions to the lowest. And in my mind, that's the important thing. You want to start with the pages that are getting the most impressions. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to start looking for posts where your click-through rate is lower than your average. And so this is what I did here. This is showing you that I got it sorted by impressions and all that. So I just picked this one right here. It's about the Boy Scouts of America medical forms, and I am using my site as an example today. With that, I have had over 230,000 impressions with a 0.6% click-through ratio, a little bit over 0.5% click-through rate. I'm in position of 7.6, so I should probably be getting more clicks than that, you would think. Now, I did want to explain to y'all what impressions means here, just in case you aren't familiar with that. When I hear the word impression, I assume eyeballs on my link, but that is not necessarily true. I'm in position 7, so you got your Google page, and there's only, you may only see the top 5 results before you have to scroll. If I'm on that page where all they have to do is scroll to see me, it is still counted as an impression, regardless of whether or not my link gets scrolled, they scroll down enough so that they can actually see my link. So, does that make sense? So if you're on that page where they don't have to click to potentially see you, then it's counted as an impression. If I'm in position 12 where they're actually having to click to the next page, then that is not counted as an impression. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm going, oh man, look at this. I have tons of opportunity with this particular post. So I identified that, and then I'm going to filter by that post. And then I'm going to click on queries. And then I'm going to sort by query impressions. Okay, so what we've done is I have copied that link to that page about, and I'm going to call them med forms because that's what we call them in scouting. So that I copied the link for that page with med forms. I clicked my plus sign up here and chose pages, and then I just popped that URL in there. Then I clicked on queries, and then I clicked on impressions to sort by impressions. What this is showing me of my query, what term did the person type into the search bar that Google showed my post on? So everything from BSA medical form, BSA health form, Boy Scout medical form, BSA medical forms, plural. So a lot of the same types of words. But I'm thinking, okay, look, there's 54,000, almost 55,000 impressions that I have gotten on this one word, BSA medical forms. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe this is what I need to look at. Maybe I need to really focus for that. Okay, so that was step 1. So we've identified it and we figured out what queries we're focusing on. Now that we're going to kind of go to step 2 of selecting what post to work on. It looks like that we've got our post and that we know which term we need to optimize for, but our evaluation is not complete. We want to open an incognito window, and then we want to search for that selected query. So BSA medical form was our query, and then we're going to search for that in an incognito window, and then we're going to analyze our results. Now, I have a couple of, the page on the left is like the first 5 results. The page on the right is, or the image on the right is the second. So if you put those on top of each other, that would be the very first page of the search results. Okay. Now, in our analysis, we want to ask ourselves, who is outranking us? Can we outrank them? And Sam talked a little bit about this, like if you've got Amazon or Wayfair, you might not be, that may not be a thing that you can do. The other thing, and let me find my notes to tell you this. Like sometimes there's different user intents, like different intents of searches, and one of them is navigational, and I will talk about that a little bit more in just a little bit. But with this particular thing, I think they're just searching for the form. What's the search intent? Oh, here are my notes. Sorry, y'all. Is it informational? Are they just trying to find out some information? Is it navigational? Or is it transactional? Or are they doing some sort of commercial investigation? And navigational is interesting because I have a couple blog posts that I think are, the searches are pretty high, but I think they're just navigational searches and they're not looking for me. But that would be like, you know how sometimes instead, if you get lazy and you don't want to type in the .com when you're going to Amazon, you just type in Amazon and hit enter, and then you just click on that first search result. That I think is what this particular search, I think that is the intent of this particular search. So my verdict on this post is I'm gonna skip it. I just don't think that it is worth my time to spend a lot of time trying to optimize that post any further because I just don't think I'm going to improve it. Now, what changes should you make? And again, this is good. We're going to assume that we found a post that actually works. I wanted to give you the example of one that didn't work just so that you could kind of think through or see that thought process there. Some of the possible changes that you can make is you can update your title. You can update your meta description. You can actually update the post. You can use schema markup. You can interlink your post, or you can write some new posts. Now, before we decide which of those changes that we need to make, we're going to actually review some things before we make that decision. And I'm going to give you kind of the overview theory, and then I'm going to walk you through an example with a blog post that I did this on. First thing you want to do, and I know this sounds crazy, go back and read your actual blog post. You may have written it 4 years ago, so go back and read it so that you know what is in that blog post. Second thing you want to do is when you do that incognito search, read the first 10 search results. Like go in every single post and read them. Because that gives you that will give you some information. Like you may say, oh, look at that, I didn't talk about that in my blog post. Add that to your list. That might be something that you need to add to your blog post. Sam talked a little bit about this. Review your people also ask and searches related to. And then you want to review answer the public. And you want to review the keywords that you're already ranking for. Okay. This is the post that I chose to actually do. And y'all, hang on just a second. I am wondering if Eric has an old version of my presentation. It should. Okay. I forgot to delete a slide, y'all. Okay, this is going to show you again. This is the, and these are 2 different sections, but a lot of times you'll see that people also ask toward the top of a blog post or in the middle of a search results page. That gives you some ideas, like what's the difference between a DIN meeting and a PAC meeting? How do you conduct a PAC meeting? How often are Cub Scout meetings? At the bottom, you can see some other searches that are related to that. PAC meeting plans 2018-2019, April PAC meeting planning sheet. So all of these things are things that you want to look at, and again, make yourself some notes of the things that you might possibly use these for. Answer the public, and Sam definitely mentioned this, and you cannot see it because the words are so tiny, but it's things like, in the middle it says Cub Scout PAC meeting plans. This right here says Cub Scout PAC meeting plans. when, are, how, where, which, why, what, will, can, who. So it uses different terms like that to come up with different potential keywords. So look at that when you're trying to decide what changes you want to make. And then look at the keywords that you're already ranking for. So this is a screenshot from the my queries for this particular page. And you can see, you know, I've got the, for this particular one, pack meeting plans has the most impressions at almost 9,000. I'm in position 2.8 for that. One thing I do want to tell you is that when you're looking at click-through rate and average position, you will see those results for the individual pages, and then you'll also see them for the queries, and they're not going to be the same. Pages, a lot of times, is a little bit lower because that's an average of all the keywords that you're ranking for, where queries just gives you the results for this particular one query that you're using. The other thing I want to mention to you guys is don't go down the rabbit hole of trying to make your Google Search Console results make sense with your Google Analytics results. Like, I've seen people get really hung up on the fact that, well, but it says I had 693 click-throughs, but I only had 500 page views. How is that possible? And it's, believe me, you can spend a lot of time looking for that because, you know, not that I did that or anything, but, you know, I'm raising my hand. There are some very, very technical reasons for that. Things like when it is counted as a page view. With Google Analytics, even within Google, there's differences. Is it counted as a page view once it starts to load, or is it counted as a page view once it finishes loading those search results pages? That's one thing that can happen. It will, sometimes it's whether or not you have, oh man, I'm going to forget the term, jQuery set up on your site or on your browser. Some people have that turned off, and if they do, it's not going to count it. It'll count it in one, but not the other. So just you know, use these as a guideline, and don't get hung up on the fact that things might not match exactly. Okay, changes that we can make to our titles. The type of headline, and there's a few different types of headlines. There's a list headline, you know, the 12 ways to conduct a Cub Scout pack meeting. How to conduct a Cub Scout pack meeting. A question, how do I conduct a pack meeting, question mark, and a generic Cub Scout pack meetings. You can add some numbers, the 12 ways to conduct a Cub Scout pack meeting. If it makes sense, add dates. Now, I will tell you, be careful about that. You can actually automate that so it'll change the year every year, but just be careful about that. One of my clients that I was working with had a competitor and who was ranking #1 for like Spring Styles 2019, and when I was looking at that competitor's blog post and I looked at the page source, I realized that page had not been touched since 2015, and it supposedly had fashions in 2019. Now, I'm not a fashion girl, but I kind of guess that the fashions are a little different in 2019 than they were in 2015. So just be careful of that. If you're doing the automated version, you might have certain posts that you want to go in and update every year and then manually change the title to be 2019. If you've got a post like that, don't put the date in the actual URL. And I'm not a big fan of having dates in your URLs, like just automatically. And if you have them, please don't change it without getting some help to do that, because you can really kind of cause some things. Yes, ma'am.
Tell me how you automate that.
It's in WordPress. And you know, okay, I'm trying to picture it in my mind. When you go down to like the part with Yoast where you have not the snippet, where you put in the meta description, right above that there's a line that says, that has like how it does your headline. Like it would have the blog post title, like mine has the blog post title, then I think it has a straight line, then it says Cub Scout Ideas out beside that. There is a variable that you can put in that automatically adds the year to your blog post. So if you cannot find that, catch me and I'll look for it, but just thinking through in my head, I think that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So be careful if you put dates in your titles.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
in the previous slide, when you said something about positions, why is the position like a fraction? Why is it 2.8? Why isn't it just position 2 or position 3?
Because it's an average.
So you're not always in the second position?
No. And let me tell you why that is. Google is going to look at your search result, like Google's going to look at your search history. And like you and I could sit down right beside each other and Google the same thing at the exact same time, and we would come up with different results. They may not be drastically different, but they might be drastically different. And the reason for that is because you've searched for certain things on your computer before we did this search. I searched for other stuff. And so when Google's trying to figure out which results to return, they may say, well, Sherry's looking at it, from this angle, so she needs this kind of post. For you, it might be, oh, she needs this kind of post. And so that's why they, and since it's an average, you come up with that, 2.8 or whatever. That's the other thing. Don't freak out when you see something that says you're in 4th position, but every time you do it in an incognito search, you come up 2nd. Don't worry about that. Again, it's an average.
And when it comes to the listicles, because I've seen a competitor do this, so if you say like, oh, 20 relaxing things to do in Arlington, then, you're up there, then next month your competitor did like 25 relaxing things to do in Arlington.
Of course they did.
So is it automatically just because they did more relaxing things to do?
Nope.
Okay.
Google's going to look at a lot of other things other than just the pure number of items that you have on your list. They're going to look at, is that other person, do they live in California and writing things about, to do in Arlington or in wherever we are. But if you live here, they might say, she might know a little bit more about this. It also depends on if they're just listing out things and putting one sentence underneath each of them, and you've got 3 paragraphs under each one of them, Google's going to take that into consideration too. So just because they got more in terms of the number does not mean that they're going to rank higher than
They
you.
beat me out because they do live in Virginia and I live in Maryland. So
That could be it. Could be at least a part of it. Probably not all of it, but could be a part of it. Any other questions before we go on? Okay. Length. You may want to shorten or lengthen the length of your blog post title. You want to make sure, you might want to change that blog post title to have some keywords in it, or move them around so the keywords are toward the front of the title. Now, one thing I do need to tell you about titles, changing the title does not mean you change the URL. Again, don't touch your URLs. But you can change the title and still have the same URL. You want to use some emotional words, and okay, emotional words are words that are going to kind of stir some sort of emotional response in the person that you're, the person that's reading it. That has kind of been proven to increase clicks and increase shares on your blog titles. If you guys, how many of you guys are familiar with the CoSchedule headline analyzer? A few people. It is a free tool. It's awesome. I love that. I use it. I do not publish a blog post without sending it through the headline analyzer. They also now have one where you can do your email, like the subject line of your emails too. That page that I gave you earlier, the Plaid St 2019, has a link to that CoSchedule headline analyzer on it. I would encourage all to use it. But it breaks down like what percentage of your words are emotional words, what percentage of your words are the next one, which is power words, what percentage are generic words, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a great tool. So y'all go check it out. And it's free. That's my favorite price. I don't know about y'all's, but it's my favorite price. You may want to add some sort of call to action in your blog post title. You may want to add, make it a question in the title. You might want to include brackets or parentheses, in your title. And that's just going to catch somebody's eye. And it's funny because, I know all this, but there have been several times when I've caught myself going, I just skipped that one because the next one has the word awesome in the title. why did I do that? Because it had awesome in there. And so I do think if you can, do some of these things, you're probably going to increase your click-through rate. Back to headlines just for a second. Generic headlines are the least clicked. So make sure that you're trying to use one of the other types. So instead of it being chocolate cake recipe as your blog post, how to make chocolate cake, or want to learn how to make chocolate cake, something like that. If you can change it to a how-to or a question rather than leaving it generic, you're just better off with that. Okay, changes that you might want to make to your meta description. The important thing to know about meta descriptions is it has little, if any, impact on your what position you're going to show up in search, but it has everything to do with click-through rates. Again, because people are reading that and deciding whether or not to click on it. You want to write for your readers. When you're writing that meta description, make sure that it is human sounding and right for your reader. You want to try to keep it to between 155 and 165 characters. Although, and I think one of the presentations we were in earlier today, I've read that a few people like to go over that, so it'll have the ellipsis at the end and make something, oh, let me see what they're talking about. The other thing you do need to know about meta descriptions is Google may not always show the meta description that you have told it to show. Sometimes, depending on the query, it'll pull out what it thinks it ought to have, or what it's going to show you based on what your query is. Make sure your keywords are in there. Oh, there we go. Make sure that you have a strong call to action in your meta description. Click here to download your free printable. You have to tell people what to do a lot of times, so make sure that you got that call to action in there. Using symbols, special characters, emojis in the meta description may get you more click-throughs too. Again, it's just like those brackets for the titles. It's drawing people's eyes to your result. Now here are some of the changes that you can make to your post. There may be updated information that you need to put in there. You may make sure that you're answering all those questions. That's why it's important to do that review of what your post says, what the other results say, before you even decide what changes to make. You want to use keywords as anchor text for your internal links. Don't make the link be click here. Don't make the hyperlink, like the words that are a hyperlink, don't use click here. Try to use something else. So to use my example of my Cub Scout pack meeting planners, I might say when you're having a pack meeting, you want to have some gathering activities at the beginning. And I'm not going to say click here to go to the gathering activities. I'm going to take gathering activities, and those are the words that are going to be the link. Schema markup. Are you guys familiar with schema markup? Okay, it's you want to use. There's different types of schema markup. There's one for blog posts. Most of you who are food bloggers know about the recipe cards. Recently, Google started using the how-to schema markup. They hadn't really shown that in search results, but you can see over here, this is an example of one that's a how-to schema markup. You can also have schema markup for lists, and even if you are not a Mediavine or publisher, Mediavine has an awesome plugin called Create that does all this stuff. Like you can choose to make it be a recipe card, a how-to, or a list, and it's free for everyone to use. So I really like it, but I'm kind of biased because I kind of like Mediavine. So you want to interlink your post. You want to think about your current content. What have you written since you originally published that post? It's so easy to forget to go back and do your interlinking there. You want to review the post with a high number of links, and you want to, I need to find this so I can tell you exactly what it says. The most linked to content on your site is where the most link equity lies. Linking internally to pages that you want to boost from those pages is a great way to increase your rank. So I hope that makes sense. So if you got this one over here that's got 50 links to it, and you're working on this post over here, you want to go back to this post with 50 links to it and add a link from there to this page. Yes?
I just have a question. So I always get nervous touching anything that's like currently in spot one, one or two. Does adding a link from that post that's in, like that's ranking high and has all those backlinks, does that like risk rocking the boat at all, or is it pretty safe?
I don't think it does, but just as soon as I say that, I mean, I think that's one of those things that you can ask 10 people and you're going to get 10 different answers. I think just adding a link is fine. Like, I wouldn't go and like overhaul it, but I think adding a link is not a problem. Okay, did you guys know that you could find out your links? Oh, is there a question back there?
Yeah, I just have a question.
Sure.
Are you familiar with pretty links?
Yes.
I noticed Yoast identifies when you use a pretty link as an internal link, it doesn't identify as an external link.
Interesting.
So I'm wondering if Google would look at it in the same way. Because it's your URL / whatever you designate, right?
Right.
As the outgoing link. But Yoast, the Yoast plugin says at the bottom, the suggestions, right? It says, this page contains no external links. Like, oh, this shitload.
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if Google would identify those as internal or external links. So the one thing I do know is, the one thing I do know is that if sometimes people assume that Yoast is the be-all and end-all of SEO, and that's not true. Yoast is a checklist. Yoast is don't say, well, I should be #1 and getting all the clicks because I got a green on Yoast. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, did you guys know that you could find out your most linked to posts in Google Search Console? Okay. So this is the when you go into when you look at your sidebar over here with your menu options, down here at the bottom you have this thing that says links. When you click on there, it's going to show you external links and internal links, and it's going to show you the top linked pages for both of them, and you can click more. And I think that, So, and what I did on this one was, once I got to this page, these are my top linked pages that are linked to from external sources. I sorted by the linking sites just to see how many, and I've got like 193 that are going to my homepage, but I'm not going to link from my homepage. But this one that's my Cub Scout uniform patch placement post, which is always my #1 post forever and ever, has 51 links going to it. So if I can figure out a way to work something into that post, my uniform patch placement post, about the post that I'm working on, I should try to do that, and link to that. If I don't want to do that one, the second one down would be fine. Skits for campfires. So again, just that you can find those links and figure out which post has the most links to it.
Sure.
When
you have that one post and you're writing about Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, how many is too many? From that top post to link out to all of your new posts that you're writing. You want to be too.
That's a good question, and I think that with that, like, the patch placement is not going to be the right post to link to, like the subtopics. Like, I don't know that I would link from a patch placement post to, a post about camping or hiking. So I'm going to, like, skip that top one and go on down to the next one. So I don't know the answer to your question of how many is too many, but just think about, does it make sense? If it doesn't make sense to link from there, don't do it. Yes?
Are you later removing those links as you add more and more? If your blog is old and your post has been doing it for years, you keep linking. Do you have 10, 20 new paragraphs or places linked, or are you kind of removing those and adding new ones?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
So when you're working on the new post, say you want to go link to it from an old, well-performing post. If you've done that many times, as you continue, do you start removing some of the stuff, some of those prior posts you linked to make room, or are you linking many?
You're not going to do this on every single one of your posts. Like, you're not going to do this process, so I don't know that every single new post that I write is going to need a link from the old one. It's primarily those posts that I want to boost. Like, this one over here is good content. the impressions are up, I just want to try to, get some more click-throughs and do some things like that, that's where you would want to do that. So, and try it and see. I'm a big fan of, don't just, if it works for you, if it works for the other person, try it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, scratch that and go on to something else. So I try and see. Any other questions? Yes?
When I'm writing a blog post and I want to do interlinks between paragraphs, I've been doing like, you may also like, and then the title of, a related, and then link to that. Is that an okay way to do it, or is there a better way that I should be doing it? Because sometimes there just isn't the keyword in the text naturally.
Right. If that's working for you, keep doing it. I believe that that they really need to be related for you to kind of get that Google burst from it. It needs to be more of, it's working naturally.
It's more for like my readers who I want to peruse something else.
Right. And that's perfectly fine. If that's your goal with the links, that's fine. But I just don't, and I actually think that's a really good practice. But in terms of will that help with my Google rankings and all that, I don't know that it would necessarily do that. Okay. New posts to write. There are, it's amazing when you start digging into your Search Console stuff, you're going to find some, recurring topics in your keywords, and you're going to go, I didn't know I was ranking for that. And you're going to say, I need to write that. I don't have a post about that, so I need to write that. And I'm going to show you an example in just a second. Am I ranking for a topic I didn't write about? You think beyond a regular post. So if you find out that there's several things that are topics that are coming up, and you've got several posts about that, do a roundup of your own posts as a new post that you can write. Now I want to show you guys. This is my example, but before I started on the example, I just want to see if there's any other questions before we kind of jump into this. Some of what I just said will make more sense after we go through this example. Any other questions before I go? Okay.
You have all of these slides?
I do, the whole thing. I turned I actually have 2 versions of it on there, and I turn them into PDFs just because I think that's a little easier. And there's one version, like this has actually got a pink background, a little bit of a pink background. So there's that version if you want to download the full color version. And then I created a version that had a white background just because it drives me nuts when I start to print something out and it's got a color background and it wastes like all my ink. And I didn't want you guys to have to go through 4 ink cartridges printing this out, so there's a white backed version there too. Okay, so in April of 2018, I started working on my Cub Scout Pack Meeting Plans post. At the time, my click-through rate was 5.9% and my average position was 6. So first thing I did was, Googled Pack Meeting Plans in an incognito window and just went through there, looking for the posts that were showing up, reading it, thinking about it, and you can see that I think I have a number 4 down here, but this is my image up here in the featured snippet. This is scouting.org is the actual Boy Scouts of America site, and but if you click on this image, it takes you to my post and not to the post that this link goes to. So here's what things look like in terms of the keywords that I was focusing on. So what I did was I exported that to Excel, just like I had mentioned it to you, and I sorted them by impressions. And then basically you just go down through and you read this and you look for patterns. And you guys can see I have monthly themes with a red square around it. Themes by itself, I put a blue square around it. This is like my first 25 search results. This is my second 25 search results. And again, themes just keeps popping up and popping up. But I did not have themes in the title, nor in my meta description for this post. So here you can see my old title was Download Your Free Cub Scout Pack Meeting Plans. Theme was not in there. I used it 7 times. When I read the post, I counted it. I actually used the phrase monthly theme 7 times within the text of my post, but it was not in the meta description at the time. So I added that. You can see, where is it? Monthly themes make meetings easier to plan. And I don't think I added it into the title, I just added it into the meta description. Okay, so what it looked like before, that's what it looked like afterwards. Now, I want to talk about some of the new content ideas that I came up with based on those keywords that I've ranked for. With this one, you can see PAC meeting ideas is in red. Blue is PAC meeting agenda. Green has activities. The second page, PAC meeting planning sheet. Activities showed up again. Planning sheet, meeting agenda template. So I'm thinking that what I've got, the post actually had written out plans. It was not a template for somebody to fill in for their plan. So I'm thinking, that might be a blog post I need to write. So I could, when I was thinking about this, like I could use a roundup of my own posts for PAC meeting activities, because I have a ton, basically my whole site's activities. So I could pick out some activities that would be great for PAC meetings and call it PAC meeting activities post, and do my own little roundup. So that's a new piece of content I could write. PAC meeting ideas for Cub Scouts. I could include that. I'd probably do those together, but that's another thing that we can do. Fun PAC meeting ideas. I might want to throw the word fun in there. I did write that free Cub Scout PAC meeting planner with the printable that they could download for free. And it was just a planning sheet. And the way I configured it is they can either type the information on their computer, it's a fillable PDF, or they can print it out and handwrite it. So, you know, because some people are paper and some people are like, I want it electronically. That's going to help with the planning sheet or that agenda template that we talked about, or meeting planner. And then this came up, and I wouldn't write a new post for the term last minute PAC meeting ideas, but I could go back to a couple of my old posts and add that to, you know, this, if it's something that my whole thing is if I don't have to have equipment to do something or supplies, that's a great thing that you can pull out of your pocket, just because with little boys and now little girls, sometimes they get bored and the activity that you're doing is not so fun. So it's great to have those things you can pull out of your pocket and do that. That's the kind of, the activities are like that are the ones that I should go back and add last minute PAC meeting ideas to it, just so that I'm kind of ranking for that keyword. Now, I want to show you what happened. I looked at this post after I did those things in January of 2019. My click-through rate went from, I think it was 5.9 to 8.4. My average position actually dropped. It went from 6 to 6.5. I'm actually happy about that, because what that means is that I'm ranking for a lot more keywords, but I'm not quite like, I'm down here like I might be 8 or 10, you know, I might not be 1 or 2 for those new keywords, but I'm 8 or 10, which is going to bring your average down, but there's more keywords that I'm ranking for. I did have a 45% increase in my page views. I looked at the 10 months from April of 18 to the February of 2019 versus the previous 10 months, which was June of 17 through March of 18. 45% increase in page views. But this is the number that I think is amazing. Like, this is when I was like, oh, I cannot believe this. Remember how I said I added PAC meeting things? Like, I added the words meeting things to my meta description. In April of 2018, I had a 1.9% click-through rate for that term. In February of 2019, I had an 11.26% click-through rate. That was an increase of almost 500%. And that's, you know, that's just more page views. Send them my way. I'll take those page views. Okay. What questions do you guys have for me? Do you want me to go back to any slides and show them to you? I'll be glad to show you that. Yes?
So one thing I've been having difficulty is when I'm doing my keyword research, like my niche is DIY crafts, and I'll want to do a project, let's say, on like DIY purpose. So I'll type that into Google, and everything that comes up in search results is roundups of bloggers doing roundups of other blogger stuff. And a lot of the times they're a higher domain than I am, like more authority, sometimes they're the same or less. But I'm wondering if it's possible even, I guess it really just depends, I guess, but if I can outrank a roundup of 100 best, whatever, with my single project.
That's a really good question, and unfortunately, I don't think I know the answer to that. But that would be interesting to try one and just make it as thorough as possible. Have a video in there. Have lots of pictures. Like, throw all those things in there because Google's going to see that. And you may not rank for. I'm sorry. What was exactly you used? DIY birdhouses. You may not rank for DIY birdhouse, but you might rank for easy DIY birdhouse to make with your kids.
Right, okay.
So, you know, so I try to find, if you can find sort of an angle like that, or, you know, maybe it's DIY birdhouses from recycled materials, or just try to find something like that, and then I think you're going to do that. And I know a lot of people really worry about, you know, how many searches a particular keyword gets, and with my niche is very specific. And with my niche, I had to be okay with writing a post for 25 or 50 searches a month, just because that's the nature of what I've got. You know, it's not like you're searching for chicken casserole recipe, because, you know, there's lots of searches for that, but not for Cub Scout planning meetings. And but what I found is that what winds up happening is there's a ton of those little keywords. Let me go back here. Well, actually, we can look here. So, like, meeting plans, meeting ideas, pack meeting plans. So there's all these like little variations that you may not think about that you're going to wind up ranking for with the little ones. And to me, you add up, Sam mentioned this, you add up a bunch of words that you're ranking for that have small searches, and all of a sudden you've got big results.
The other thing you might want to do is email that blogger that has 100 of that project and say, hey, I just wrote a new project, and you might add it in your roundup.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
I will link to people. If they email me and they've got a good post in their legit blog, I will absolutely stick them in the roundup so I have more items in my roundup. I'm not the top blog though.
Okay, I think I saw, yes.
When you have all these similar terms, are you taking those terms and, like, I guess I'm trying to figure out when you add them to an existing post versus when you make it a new post. Because especially for food, I think it's tricky. So if I look at, like, the 30 queries, the first 30 queries are just those words in different ordering. There's nothing else there. So I've gone into the post and I've done all the different variations of chocolate chip cookies, you know, all
Right.
the different ways. Is there just, that's it? If I've gotten 30 queries?
Yeah, I think that, yeah. I mean, it depends on how long your post is. Like, if your post is relatively short, you may only be able to work a synonym in one or two spaces. But if it's a longer post, you can work it in more. And I would again look at those impressions. And so, you know, and even when you're doing your keyword research, again, that's, you know, the higher number are the ones that you want to work in first. And then if you can work some others in, that's great. If not, that's fine too. Let's see. Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
Do you have another URL link for the downloads? Because that one isn't working when you get a chance.
Did it say Plaid Street?
It did.
Plaid Street 19. Let me just check. And of course, I'm not connected to Wi-Fi. Give me just a second. I promise I'll publish that post, y'all.
Yeah, it's not working, Sherry.
Okay.
What
I
else?
will fix that. It will be done as soon as we're done here. I'll fix that for you. Sorry about that.
Do you think it could be something else, or I can check?
Let me see.
You have another question, Sharon?
Okay. Let me just do this. Oh, very interesting. Okay. Where was the other question? Yes. That is an interesting thing. Okay, so how many of you have opened up Google Chrome like on your phone and it lists out all these articles that you might want to look at? Has anybody done that or seen that? Where they're like recommending articles that you might want to read? That is what the Discover tab is. And I actually worked with a client not long ago who was getting a ton of traffic. Her post was something about like travel advisories about Mexico or something like that. And she was getting, I mean, literally like 30,000 page views on this post. And we're like, she's like, where is this coming from? And I dug and I'm like, I can't. It's not spam because it's not performing like spam. So I know that it's not like bots or something. And finally, she emailed me about a week later and said, I just happened to click on that Discover tab, and that's where all the traffic was coming from. And she was getting like weird emails about it. I mean, some crazy stuff. So yeah, so that's where that is it's like a recommendation. So. Oh, okay.
Set up that way.
Well, why did it set up that way? That was not what I wanted to do. I'll fix it so that it's there. Thank you. So it'll be this Plaid St 19 with no spaces or anything. Okay, what other questions do you have? Well, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Feel free to contact me if you have questions. I'd love to, take a look at your sites and help you out if I can. And I guess we will go ahead and have another break since, I'm sure we need a potty break again. So, thank you.
That's working is like Plaid St or Plaid-ST-2019.